time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Big news. Big news. Democrats going to move a $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill. Going to do some incredible things. Got an opportunity here. And an excellent opportunity here to regain their credibility with the working class in this country. They've got an opportunity to show that they've got a backbone, a spine, that they've got direction, that they're actually going to lead. This, to me, really important. The other thing, and look, there's a lot of great things in this. For me, the number one thing, the PRO Act is still in it. The first bit of major, I'm talking major labor law reform in my entire lifetime, and really in the last 70 years. You go back to Taft-Hartley in 1947, that out of whole cloth created this right to work environment that basically says you can have the right to freeload. You can get all the benefits of being a union member, the wages, the hours, the conditions, the grievance procedure, all of that stuff. You can get it for free. Because who doesn't love free stuff? Who doesn't love to get stuff off the expense of someone else? Basically, to starve unions of resources to be able to fight for those better wages, hours, conditions. For me, the fact that the PRO Act is still there, really important. Shows Democrats have a little bit of a spine, a little bit of a push. Now, we're going to find out what the Senate parliamentarian does. Not going to be thrilled if she pulls that out of there. But for now, step in the right direction. This is one of those things that I've been saying for the longest time we need to get done. You want to solve a lot of problems in this country? You want to solve a lot of our tension points? Give people good jobs. Give people opportunities to lead a better life. And things will take care of themselves. I firmly believe that. You give people quality work with a quality wage and an opportunity to support their families. A whole lot of people, the temperature cools a little because people have hope and opportunity in the future. You know, you go back to the Obama years, they were talking a lot about hope and opportunity, hope and change, yet they didn't do the one thing that I wanted them to do from the beginning, which was pass major labor law reform. This could be that moment. Look, we've got the most pro-union president ever. In my view, or at least in my lifetime, this is the moment. Now, it's going to come down to, and we know this, it's going to come down to those handful of Democrats. Will you get the Mansions and the Simonas and the Werners and some of the the one from New Hampshire, the one from out west? You're going to get them all on board. I got to think the fact that it's still there at this moment and they're moving forward on this, a good chance. Now, lots of good stuff in this. The fact that right now there's a push to lead, it's in here, 2 years free community college for every American student. That is huge. They're going to expand the $300 a month child tax credit on into the future. Long-term expansion of this is what they said. Going to expand Medicare to have dental, vision, eye, hearing, all that stuff. So that all those stuff that's important. Because it's always been weird to me that your teeth and your eyes and your ears and all that, they're not part of your body. So that, and look, I've talked to a number of people recently who are thrilled about this. Now, if only we could get them to lower the Medicare age, get it down to 55, you'd see a slew of people retiring, opening up opportunities for younger workers. That may come at some point. Also, there's going to be the continuation of additional subsidies for folks to get the Affordable Care Act, health care, because of the pandemic. That's a good thing. There's some stuff in there about climate change because I don't know about you, but it's we got a lot of work to do to get us moving. And as the frame has been laid out, and this is one of those moments where I'm going, thank goodness already. I've for years I've heard people say, "Oh, we need small government. We need small government." And I've always said, look, I don't care how big or how small government is. I want effective government. I want government who's going to be able to do the things that we need them to do, the things that we can't individually do, that we collectively do through our government. That's how big or how small I want them to be, to meet the challenges of our moment. Right now, pandemic, big thing. Economy, big thing. Infrastructure, big thing. Healthcare, big thing. Education, big thing. All big things that we should be collectively moving forward on and giving people the opportunity, well, to make better lives. So I saw this line, the era of big government is over. And it's about time. Because this all-out assault on our government has been dangerous, and it's gotten us to this moment. And, the Republicans built an entire image and brand around bashing government. They've built their entire ideology around, let the free market take care of things, only to find out, and we all knew this, that the free market is in it for profit, to make as much money and put as much money in their pockets as possible. This is one of those moments where I look at this and go, I want effective government. I want to solve some of our problems. As I said at the beginning of the year, I'm about getting things done. I'm not about, a Democrat or a Republican. We got to get things done. For too long, we've been mired in this kind of just this logjam that it's either not perfect enough or, we find a reason to always kill it. Now, look, there's talk right now that the squad, AOC and Ilhan Omar and the others are going to vote against this $3.5 trillion package because they want a $6 trillion package. Obviously the perfect over the possible. And look, would I love to see a $6 trillion investment package in this country? Absolutely. Is it going to happen? Probably not. And you probably weren't going to get those moderate Democratic senators to come along. Now, I get the squad's play here. We want bigger. We want to push. I get that. 100% there. I don't think they block it. Again, I think they make their stand, but it passes because it has to. Because here's the thing. Come election time, do you want to be the one person who stopped progress? Do you want to be that one person who says, no, we're not paving roads, we're not educating kids, we're not getting health care for people? No. Are you going to be that person? Right now, in this moment, the answer is no. Now, if the shoes were on the other foot and this were the Republicans, absolutely, they would kill this if they could. Because they don't want any of those things. They're happy the way things are. And as I've been saying for quite some time, the reality is, if we're going to remake our economy, if we're going to overhaul our economy and give people the opportunities and fix some of the massive gaps between the working class and everyone else, between minority groups, between LGBTQ groups. If we're going to pull this country back together in some way, it's going to be in the workplace. And I've been saying this all along. This is how we mend this country, by remaking our economy in a way that people have the idea that it's actually going to be something that's going to make the test of time. I mean, we're not going to get back to where my grandparents' generation was. We're not going to get there yet. But moving in that direction is important. And I'll tell you, what's interesting to me? What's interesting to me is we're not hearing so much about socialism right now. For a while, Republicans were, socialism. But this month, checks are coming out for the child tax credit. And this is the important part of this. It's coming out for everyone. This is not something you can pick and choose one group or another. This is not something that you can divide the working class over. This isn't something that you can pit groups against each other. Well, they got it, but you didn't. Not happening. Everybody under 150 grand for a couple gonna get it. The mass of the working class going to get this, and there's no way to divide. Everyone's getting it. And what's interesting, even my Trump supporting T Twizzler friends, they're willing to take it and quietly accept the socialism because they're benefiting from it. And look, I'm not rubbing their nose in it. I'm not, and I will not, because this is a good thing. This is a moment. This is a moment of possibility. This is a moment where we can say, look, there are programs that could be good. Stop with the idiotic labeling and think about moving forward, thinking about getting things done, accomplishing something, making lives better. See, for me, that's what government can do if used properly. Now, we can have a government like we had in the last term that, smash everything and deregulate and hands off and, you go corporate America and, ultimately try and overthrow. But we can also use it in the right way. Restrain it in the right ways where we need to. And make lives better. And I know, I hear it all the time. But Rick, we can't afford it. Can't afford it. You want to spend, what, $6 trillion investing in the country? Yeah. Yeah, the American Society of Civil Engineers says it's actually more than that we need to invest in our infrastructure. Our infrastructure. We're not even talking about health care for red states. This is the part that blows my mind. 2 million people in red states are going to get health care because of Joe Biden. This is about investing in not just roads and bridges and in the hard infrastructure, but in humanity, but in our seniors and our young people and our workers in ways that haven't been done in generations. And you could look at me and go, it's not enough. It's not Bernie Sanders' way. It's not, it's not AOC's way. It's not any of that. It's not enough. It's not perfect. And I go, you're never getting perfect. Take what we can get, move on it, and then continue to organize to push for better. But this idea that we're going to kill this because it's not perfect right now is ludicrous. And the fact that they keep saying we can't afford it, nonsense. We can afford it. There's tons of money out there. We just have to have a tax code that says, you know what? The bigger your shoulders, the more water you carry back to the cave. The more you make, the more you're going to have to pay. Sorry, that's just how it is. You've gotten away way too long. We've already created the largest billionaire class in the history of civilization. We've already done that. We just witnessed, the space race between billionaires. And aside, someone sent me a cartoon of like an astronaut sweating profusely trying to make the decision, end child hunger or go to space. And my thought was, why is this cartoon even here? There was no choice. They didn't fret over it. They went to space because it's about them. We have to make it about us. And this is one of those moments. So when the AFL-CIO put out their most recent executive pay watch report, nothing surprising, honestly. What we found out is in 2020, our CEOs of the S&P 500 companies, they received about, on average, about $15.5 million in compensation. Not bad work if you can get it. 299 times that of the average worker in those companies. So didn't break the 300, been there before, but didn't do that. The average CEO saw their pay jump by get this, by $712,720. And you go, what's a cool nearly $750,000 increase? That's 1 year increase. Just last year. Over the past decade, our S&P 500 CEOs have seen their pay jump $2.6 million. Now you go, wow, that's over a decade, Rick. That's not that big of a deal. The average worker, the average production worker, non-supervisory worker, over the same period, that same decade, they saw their income go up by a mere $957. $95 a year. Enough money to go out to a nice dinner. And you're going to tell me that we can't afford to tax these CEOs a little bit, to fund education, to fund roads, to fund the infrastructure that their companies take advantage of? We can't tax these corporations, who a lot of them pay virtually nothing in taxes because of all the loopholes that their lobbyists have created for them. Really, are we going to... Is that the argument? Sorry, Rick, we would love to do all that wonderful stuff like save the planet, help children get an education, help Granny make it through her golden years by getting her choppers fixed and getting the ears done. We'd love to do all those hippie liberal things. But geez, we just have to choose CEO pay or Granny, corporate tax breaks or the children. The people who love to tell us how much they love the children and how much they care about the children, they're the ones, mind you. Remember I said again a minute ago how the $300 per child tax credit's coming out this month? The people who told us that they love the children. Oh, love the children. Every one of them voted against it. Except Mitt Romney. Something wrong here. Now you look at the CEOs who were the worst, the consumer folks, the discretionary consumer sector, Amazon, basically, those companies like Amazon. They saw a worker to CEO ratio of 741 to 1. So when Jeff Bezos says, hey, well, we're paying $15 an hour, this guy's the richest guy in the history of civilization, just about. What's interesting to me in this whole report, and it goes through a bunch of stuff, what's interesting to me is the sector that had the closest CEO to worker pay were the utilities sector. They had a 97 to 1 CEO to worker pay ratio. Now, their CEO still made over almost $13 million. The difference here is the utility sector, heavily unionized. People who make good wages, good benefits, good opportunities. I want that for everybody. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1959. That was the day 500,000 steelworkers walked off the job in a historic 116-day strike in defense of work rules. It was the largest industry-wide strike. It was also the last. The strike affected 12 steel companies and shut down more than 85% of steel production. Mill owners refused to grant wage increases unless the union agreed to changes in the contract. Specifically, they were looking to eliminate Section 2B, titled Local Working Conditions. The bosses wanted the ability to change the number of workers assigned to any given task. They also wanted to introduce new machinery and rules that would reduce labor hours and cut the workforce. United Steelworker members understood this as an assault on workplace safety and a move to break the union. Mill bosses hoped that a long strike would provoke the membership to abandon their union. But according to Jack Metzger, author of Striking Steel, members had grown used to walkouts every 3 years and planned accordingly. As well, the United Steelworkers had a well-oiled machinery, including an internal welfare system for hardship cases, and also reached out to merchants, banks, charitable agencies, and local and state governments to organize relief. By the end of August, the Department of Defense stoked anxieties that national security was at risk. 3 months into the strike, union funds dwindled and strikers felt the pinch. President Eisenhower invoked a Taft-Hartley injunction, hoping to force strikers back to work. As the union rose to challenge Taft-Hartley's constitutionality, solidarity among the mill owners crumbled. Kaiser Steel broke ranks and settled separately. Their contract granted wage increases and preserved Section 2B, which set the precedent for the contract that was eventually signed industry-wide.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the big news, and look, I think this is really important in this infrastructure plan, this budget reconciliation plan that they're going with. They're going to get health insurance to 2 million people in red states, and you go, why would Joe Biden do that? Why would he? Why would he vote? Why would he vote to and push to have people in states who voted against him covered? I would argue, one, because he's a decent human being, and that's what decent human beings do. But two, loves the country and not vindictive like the former guy. The former guy did everything he could possibly do to make the states that didn't vote for him more miserable. And you saw that in the SALT part of the tax bill. But here to share some thoughts on the healthcare part of what's going into this plan. Medicare expanding, dental, vision, hearing. Good stuff. Here to share some thoughts on this and also the expansion of some Medicaid. I've asked Laura Packard to come talk with us. Laura's a stage 4 cancer survivor and founder of Healthcare Voices. Laura, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on.
So I don't want to steal Joe Biden's line. This is a BFD.
Yes. Since the Affordable Care Act was passed in 2010 and actually implemented in 2014, there have been many red states where low-income Americans have not been able to get health care because of conservatives in those states refusing to expand Medicaid. And even with generous subsidies included in the American Rescue Plan, they still won't do it. And so that's why there's finally good news that in the upcoming infrastructure package, there will be a federal version of Medicaid for those states for people that don't make enough money to get help right now, but can't afford health care.
Now, is this the beginning? Because, when I was looking at this, I'm going, what I wanted from the beginning was Medicare for all, and I'm very honest about that. But here, I'm someone who won't destroy everything to get the perfect. We got what we could get. But I also wanted, if we had to go this route, a public option. Is this the beginning of what could be that public option?
It could be, because this is another federal program like Medicare that's going to cover people in multiple states. And it'd be kind of ironic if Republicans in those states refused to expand Medicaid, screwed over their own citizens, and then that led to the birth of a new public health insurance program.
That would be almost poetic justice. Now, obviously, I got to question whether our Supreme Court would allow that, given how crazy it is. And I'll be honest, I was surprised that they let it stand. I was fully expecting them to chuck the whole thing. I'm glad they didn't. But how do you think this then, because this is clearly going to be another lawsuit and another revival of repeal and replace and all of that coming. How do you think that plays out?
Well, I hope that the Supreme Court is sick and tired of healthcare, just like the rest of us are sick and tired of having our healthcare threatened every year. I don't know what the courts will rule or when they'll rule it, but over 2 million people in states like Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Texas can't get health care right now. And these are the essential workers that we supposedly value. Well, we don't value them enough to provide them health care in places like Texas, apparently. But there have been people suffering and people dying without health care in all these years that their legislators just refuse to do their duty. And so now the feds are coming in.
Yeah, I mean, you look at where we started with our healthcare system, and right when the ACA passed, and I remember this story like it was yesterday. Within like a year of it passing, I met a couple who the husband hadn't had health care in years. They got an ACA plan that got them to be able to go see a doctor, and he was diagnosed with cancer. And they basically saved his life because he was able to get preventative care. And I remember that story because, you go, well, we didn't get everything we wanted. I go, but to that guy, we did, because that saved his life.
Exactly. And I'm fortunate enough that I lived in states that had expanded Medicaid. And so the healthcare systems in those states were stable. You see hospitals, especially rural hospitals, closing left and right in the states that didn't expand Medicaid because there's just no money to cover people who are uninsured. So it winds up affecting everybody when some people in your state can't get the care they need.
Now, 2 million people is a lot of people, but we've got a lot of uninsured folks in this country. And I'm sure you're going to hear it from people. I've heard it already. It doesn't go far enough. What do you say to the argument that, it's all fine, well, and it's good. They've done a half measure here. What do you say to that?
Well, this is a start. And I think if we can get more than 50 senators to go along with something better in the future, I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, even when Democrats had 60, they didn't get it. So in looking at this, because, of course, there are things that I would like to see happen. I've said, from the beginning, you take what you can get. And if this is what we can get, we take this now. And then we march forward. I would love to see the Medicare age drop down to at least 55 to get, old people out of the workforce and get them retired so the younger generation can take over. And also to lower healthcare costs for people. The number one, I talk to people all the time. The number one concern that people have are the cost of healthcare. And you look at the fact that, healthcare CEO, because the AFL-CIO just did their annual executive pay watch. And, in the healthcare industry, the numbers were just completely astronomical on what the CEO to worker pay ratio was. I mean, something like 300, I think like 250 to 1, 253 to 1. I mean, just a massive amount where you go, maybe we cut those CEOs' pay down a little bit, maybe raise those workers' pay up, and maybe we expand access for people.
Exactly. Is our healthcare system designed to make a few corporate CEOs rich, or is it designed to make Americans healthier?
Now, your group, you go around and you hear these stories quite often. As the founder of the Healthcare Voices group that you have founded, you got to have some real horror stories, but two, you got to have some ones that keep you going every day.
Absolutely. And my own story is case in point in that the Affordable Care Act saved my life. And without it, I would be bankrupt or dead. But I meet so many people that have been in my situation that they have an accident, they get a diagnosis, and thankfully they have the health insurance they need to still be here. But it didn't used to be the case. The AFL-CIO sent me to Arkansas in 2009, and I was one of the people on the ground helping to get the Affordable Care Act passed in the first place. And I met people all across Arkansas that declared medical bankruptcy or lost loved ones because of how broken the insurance markets were before. And I mean, they're still not perfect, but at least there is the ACA option for many more people.
Yeah, and look, I've heard a lot of the same stories as well. But the thing that I keep getting people coming back at me at, and it's not wrong. And this is one of those things where I'm going to agree right up front that the ACA has made corporate fat cats a little wealthier, that we haven't done enough to rein in those costs. There's a lot more to do. But what do you say to the people who go, look, you've expanded this, you're expanding more. It's just going to be just handouts to these big corporations.
Well, I think that we live in a world in which we have laws that are passed by Congress and signed by the president, and we can work to change who is in Congress and who runs this country. But with the deck that we have, this looks to be one of the best. This is a game that we can win at this level of stakes.
Yeah. See, but here's the thing, and this is, I used to believe that too, that, you get these bad politicians out. We've got the ultimate in term limiter. We've got the power to vote the bums out. But sadly, we rarely do. And especially I'm looking at these red states where, the horrible labor laws, lower wages, less health care, less retirement security, unsafe workplaces, all the negatives that you would have. And let's talk about health care, the fact that covered at much lower rates, and then, state government leaders who won't expand Medicaid, who won't help and get people the help that they need. And yet they're still getting votes. They're still getting people to put them back into office. That's just crazy to me.
Well, I think that most Americans don't follow politics day to day like we do. There are more important things on their minds. You can argue whether this should be the most important thing, but most people are just trying to get through the day. And so it's on us to reach out to those people and make sure they know that if their elected officials are bums, to vote them out.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is where I think health security is one of those things that's so incredibly important. In fact, today, I'm generally not someone who goes to the doctor, hardly ever. I've got probably the best health care that this country has to offer, and I don't use it very often. But today, we're on vacation. I think I had some swimmer ear kind of thing going on. I went to the doctor. I didn't think about, can I afford this? I went, I got taken care of. I'm better. I'm grateful for it. Cost, trouble, didn't cross my mind for a second. And for me, I want that for everyone. I want you to be able to go, you know what, there's something wrong. I should go have it looked at today, not 6 months down the road when it becomes a real problem. And I don't think we think like that I don't think we think like that enough.
Mm-hmm. Although there's more good news because not only does this infrastructure bill cover people that fall into the Medicaid gap, but also it strengthens Medicare, including vision and dental and hearing coverage, which is about time.
Yeah, why is it taking so long to do that? I mean, I remember, when my grandmother, when she was alive, we had to, start coughing out, thousands of dollars for hearing aids and dentures. And you go, explain to me why we can't use the buying power of Medicare to get better prices on this stuff. I mean, because after all, my view on the whole Medicare for all thing is the idea is it's a giant buying pool. It really is capitalism. It's one giant buyer, being able to buy in massive economies of scale. It seems sane and rational to me.
Well, I think since the Tea Party takeover in 2010 and so on, we just haven't had a majority in Congress and a president that cared about healthcare. Yeah. And now the stars have aligned and we finally do. And so that's why you see this one bill, the infrastructure bill, has every possible thing included into it because we don't know how long this moment will last where we can actually do some good.
So let's ask the serious question. How likely is it that this passes? There's some things in here that I'm thrilled with. Free college for community colleges. The PRO Act is still in there. There's a bunch of things that the eye and dental and the hearing for Medicare recipients, all great things. Not going to really matter if it doesn't get through. What are the chances of Manchin and Simina and Warner and some of the other more moderate Democrats coming along? What are the chances of that, do you think?
Well, the news that's come out over the past couple of days, it sounds like they've agreed on a number and everybody is on board with that. So that's a good sign. It sounds like the bipartisan infrastructure piece, the roads piece, or whatever that the Republicans are working on with Democrats, that sounds a little bit shakier, that the Republicans are starting to get cold feet, which is no surprise to you or I, because we know that the Republicans are not on the up and up when it comes to negotiations, that Mitch McConnell and his caucus will just pull something back as soon as you try to pick it up. But it sounds like the Democrats are on board with the human infrastructure piece, that they have a number and they have at least a rough outline of what it includes, and that we still have a long way to go. And there's going to be setting up legislation and votes on it probably right through September, maybe October or later. So we're by no means at the finish line, but so far, so good. And I think everyone is motivated to produce something because a lot of them are up for election next year and they need something to point to. So they're very motivated in that sense.
No, they've got to be, because I've said from the beginning, I've been saying this since January, if they don't get something big on the infrastructure front, if they don't get something substantial and visionary and transformational and all of those words, if they don't get something that's going to make people's lives better, 2022 is going to be a bad year.
Mm-hmm. And we live in a moment in time in which it's possible to do something. At least today, we could cobble up enough votes in the House and the Senate, even though it's going to be very tight because it's a 50-50 Senate with Kamala Harris as tiebreaker. And I think it's only 3 votes up in the House. So very small numbers, but we do have the raw materials to get there. We just need the will to do it.
Yeah. So the other question I had someone throw at me, does the squad derail this because they want more? Does that happen?
I don't think so. I don't think the moderates or the squad, the more progressive members, I think everybody is motivated to produce something. And there's going to be a lot of fights in the next couple of months to determine exactly what the final bill looks like. But I think at the end of the day, no matter where people's politics are, they are aligned with the idea of doing something.
No, we got to do something. We can't wait any longer. And in fact, there's some stuff in there about climate change that I haven't gone completely through, and I'm not 100% sure what it is. But at least there's someone thinking about doing something, because the Guardian had a story, I think it was yesterday, that said that the Amazon is actually emitting more CO2 than it's absorbing. We're in real trouble.
Mm-hmm. And we've only got this one planet. There aren't enough spaceships for Bezos and everybody else to blast off to a different one.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. I read a thing the other day on how difficult it is to live in the space station, and how, there are no rich people going to space. They would never stay to that kind of a regimented schedule. Never gonna happen. But the hope is we get this pushed through.
Don't want that.
The hope is we get this pushed through. We get moving in the right direction, and we get something done. Laura, last question I got for you. What do you want people to do? What's the action?
Contact your senators and your representative and tell them you want them to vote for the infrastructure bill, and for it to include strengthening Medicare, filling the Medicaid gap, making the Affordable Care Act tax subsidies permanent, including home and community-based services so that seniors can retire in dignity and people with disabilities can get the help they need to live at home and not in an institution, and lower drug prices now.
All of the above. Laura Packard, I appreciate the time. Thanks so much. As always, great stuff.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1931. That was the day that Ralph Gray was attacked for trying to organize black farmers. Gray was born to a large African-American family in Alabama. Living in the Jim Crow South, he became a tenant farmer. He joined the Communist Party. At the time, communist labor organizers were often more open to black membership and leadership than were other white-dominated labor organizations. Along with his brother Tommy, Ralph helped to found the Croppers and Farm Workers Union in Tallapoosa County, Alabama. They set to work organizing black sharecroppers. Then, several of the local landlords stopped providing food and money to their workers. They did this in an effort to force the black workers to labor on building a new sawmill. Angry sharecroppers joined the new union in protest. The union demanded more autonomy for the tenant farmers. They also demanded a longer school day and a public school bus for their children. Alarmed by this organizing, the sheriff, Kyle Young, led a posse to break up a union meeting. They beat and terrorized the union members. The vigilantes then went to Tommy Gray's house, where they fractured his wife's skull. Ralph Gray chased them off with a shotgun. But the next night, on July 16th, the union met again. Gray and others armed themselves to protect the meeting. Gunfire was exchanged. The sheriff shot Ralph Gray while he lay on the ground, already wounded. The mob of vigilantes then burned Gray's house to the ground. They placed Gray's mutilated corpse on the courthouse steps as a warning to any others who dare to stand up for the rights of black workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So back on June 30th, the management of this criminal justice reform news network, this news website called The Appeal, and I'd spent time on there over the last year or so because, look, it's an important topic. They announced on the 30th that they were closing down. And, you know, like all non-corporate websites and news outlets, it's always funding. The lack of funding is the death of non-corporate journalism, without question. But the workers there, when they got this news that, you know, their jobs are going to be gone, they're closing down The Appeal, because of their union contract, they got a reasonable severance pay. They're taking that severance, plowing it back into this news outlet, and relaunching The Appeal, which I think is incredible. And here's the other part of it. From what I understand, management said, you know what, fine. If you could make a go of it, great. We struggled, by all means. And now the Appeal Union is doing just that. And here to share some thoughts on how that is going, I've asked Nick Wing to come talk with us. Nick is the editor there at The Appeal and with the Appeal Union. Nick, thanks for taking time for us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So how bad did I screw that up? Did I get the basic facts of that right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, this is sort of an ongoing long saga. It took about almost 2 months for this to really reach a close. But yeah, we, back in May, we announced that we were organizing due to some ongoing disagreements with management and the way things were running, which really kicked off this prolonged drama. And, in the end, we reached a conclusion, which I don't think was the ideal outcome for anyone. We were able, as you said, to secure some severance, which gave us a nice runway to begin this new effort. Ultimately, the site has gone dark until we can relaunch. But, as you said, because we unionize, we organize, we harness that collective power, and we were really able to bargain for a future. So, yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Now, the work that you guys do there, I think, is really important. You're talking about, reforming our criminal justice system, which for people who are at the lower end of the socioeconomic scale, it ain't working well for. And I think the stories that you tell are important that people understand, which is why I think it's great that you guys are making a go of this, and why I think people should help support the work that you do. I'm a big fan of supporting non-corporate journalism at every opportunity where we can do that.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Would it be helpful to give a quick sort of elevator pitch of what we do?
Go.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, yeah, nonprofit news organization, and we're really dedicated to exposing the human costs of the U.S. criminal legal system. We think that sort of differentiates us from some other people because, many Americans have really been conditioned, I think, to view the legal system as this really essential force that exists to mete out justice and to keep us all safe, right? But it seems like the closer you look at it, the clearer it becomes that the system's actually structured in ways that work against those goals. So not only might the criminal legal system fail to keep people safe, but it's really perpetuating a lot of harm, contributing to the cycles of trauma, this violence, poverty, instability, and all of that serves to make us less safe. So you have a system that's fundamentally, hurting its own goals. And as you said, you look at how these laws are enforced, and it's just hard to see it as anything other than like a gigantic machine that is pretty much organized to criminalize and disadvantage disproportionately Black and brown communities, but just people all across society. So yeah.
Mostly poor people. And look, as someone who grew up in a housing project, I saw people get involved in the system. And once you get in the system, you never seem to get out. It's just this vicious cycle of violating one term or another constantly, and even, ineptitude and errors too, that uproot people's lives. And, you get picked up, you lost a job. That contributes to more. I mean, the more I look at this, the more we do need real reform of our system. But also we do need to find out, the stories that are involved in it, which is why I think the work that you guys do there is important. Now, walk me through some of this stuff, though, because I think that most people that I know, as you said, think the criminal justice system is there to enforce the laws even-handedly, the woman with the blindfold on and the scales, and they're looking at the stories that are coming out on Fox News and OAN and other places of, the country's just riddled in crime. Crime's gone through the roof since Joe Biden became president. And it's all because those hippie liberals are talking about police reform. Help me explain why that's not the right narrative.
Yeah, I mean, you really nailed it. I was going to say, if you've been following any mainstream media coverage, you might think that we're in the middle of a crime wave or something, probably more a crime, Sharknado or something, the most alarmist thing you can think of. I think it is important to mention that some categories of crime have increased in recent years. But when you look at the most sensationalist of these stories, they're not really giving you the whole picture. So you talk to cops, you talk to prosecutors, you talk to corporations. Maybe they're all talking about, they're giving these dire warnings about crime and how we need to respond aggressively and start locking people up again. But of course, that's what those people want, right? I mean, they're not disinterested actors in the coverage, in the context of these stories. They benefit and in many cases are in charge of holding up the status quo as exists right now. So not only that, but they have nothing to lose from returning to failed tough on crime policies. These are not the people who are going to be arrested. These are the people who benefit from, really a police state, lockdown, throwing people in jail for shoplifting and all of that. So, when we cover crime and public safety at the Appeal, we really want to make sure that we're not basing our framing, we're not basing our narratives, we're not basing our reporting on speaking to those sources, the people at the top of the system, and certainly not those sources alone. And we really want to make sure that we're talking to the grassroots organizers, the movement builders, the impacted communities, the policy experts, all the people who are actually closest to these problems, who know them, best and who have the most at stake in them. We want to be talking to those people because those are the ones who are going to give you an honest picture. And we really think that anyone who's doing reporting and not talking to those people, it's a disservice. And in a lot of ways, it reflects an editorial choice that is going to drive mass incarceration, especially as we look at crime trends.
Well, I mean, that's also a political part of this as well. I go back to Bill Clinton, and we're going to put 100,000 more policemen on the streets. And I remember at the time going, is that a good thing? Do we really want, constant policing? Are we not capable of making sure that we follow our own laws and then we're told to be afraid of everyone. Murders are up and gun violence, but the gun's never the problem. But we're told, around every corner is a boogeyman, and the only way that we're going to be safe is to do some of these really heavy-handed things, of which I'm not thrilled with.
Totally agree. I mean, if you let the people who have the most power already dictate, the narrative and dictate the policy response, we're gonna repeat the mistakes of the past. So we just really think it's important to highlight what we see as the honest effects of a mass incarceration system that we have. If there's going to be a debate around, as you say, returning to stuff that happened in the 90s, if you talk only to cops and to prosecutors, they're not going to give you the full portrait of what might happen when that goes down. So we think it's just a really important time to continue this sort of coverage, and we're hopeful that we can get off the ground as fast as we can, really, to get back to that work.
Yeah. Now, anytime I talk to a policeman about anything like this, it's always the Willie Horton scenario. We let some violent offender out on bail, on parole, whatever, and they go and they do something really horrible. And we can't have that. We've got to keep people locked up forever and throw away the key and all those things. Walk me through a story that's the anti Willie Horton story, because I don't think people hear those stories at all. It's not they don't hear it enough. They don't hear it at all. We hear the violent criminal who got out and did some bad things. But I gotta wonder if that's, and I'm hoping you're the expert here. I gotta hope that that's not the norm.
I feel a little bad boosting one of the few stories that I've done. There's so many good reporters here, but just because I'm closest to the material, I'll start there. I covered a prison in-reach program in California that was run by people who had themselves been sentenced to life in prison and had gotten out on parole, sometimes after decades in prison. And they go back into the prison and they teach, sort of life skills. They teach everything from peer counseling. They encourage people to really get to the core of why they were living a criminal lifestyle at the time that they went into prison. And just hearing people talk about the experiences that they had, the upbringing that they had that led to those situations. I mean, it's just a human story. I mean, the sense of we need to be scared of these people and these are all monsters in prison. It's ridiculous. And so many people get caught up in a system because we invest so much money into criminalizing them and punishing them and sending them to prison. Where if they had positive influences in their life, they had an after school program or something like that, you just get the sense that really we could have caught them before they went into prison in the first place. And it doesn't take talking to many people who have actually been affected by the criminal justice system to get that and to understand that. So, that's really the perspective we're coming at it from. We just think that the legal system just solving these problems with handcuffs in a jail cell, it's not good enough. And it's a bad return on our investment.
Yeah, but we tried that, Nick. We had midnight basketball for a while. Well, no, you wouldn't remember. You're not old enough to remember that. But, during the H.W. Bush years, we had midnight basketball. That was supposed to solve all our problems.
Yeah, but basketball games, but how much money is going into that versus how much police we're paying the cops to patrol outside of the basketball game to then arrest people who get into trouble.
So this is where a lot of this I'm 100% with you, but you get to this point where now we're talking about rapists and murderers. Clearly there's got to be a system in place that we remove those elements who can't be part of society, and we do have to have places for them. So for me, while the system does need reforming, I'm nowhere near we need to chuck the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that we're so far away from a well-functioning system that we're happy to have debates about the scope of change that needs to happen. I think fundamentally the equation that we're looking at is so deeply flawed. I don't disagree that there are probably people who should not be free in society because of things that they have done or mental illnesses that make it impossible for them to function without some sort of supervision. But certainly throwing them all away and locking, throwing them away and locking them up, throwing away the key, that's just, it happens to way too many people. And it's sort of gotten us to where we are, which is, lots of people who are just excluded from society in one way or another.
Yeah, it's a lot that has to be done, and I'm wishing you guys the best. I think the work that you do is important. I hope people will take a look at the Appeal website once you guys get up and running, and follow you on Twitter at the Appeal Union. We'll get links out on social media how folks can do that. Now, I want to spend this last couple of minutes going, how can we help you? Obviously, I want one of those cool T-shirts. So what's that cost us to get? Let's walk me through.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at some merchandising options. The Appeal Union shirts. We'll have to get another batch if we got a bunch of people interested. The best thing you can do, honestly, follow us on the Appeal Union, as you said, on Twitter. Click on theappeal.org. We have a bunch of stories that we've published over the last couple of years. A pop-up will show up when you go there. There will be a link to our fundraising campaign, kick in, $5, $10. It really makes all the difference. There's a lot of work we have to do to get up and running. It's not cheap to do this. We're all sort of volunteering our time right now until we have an entity through which we can, get the money and pay ourselves. That we don't know exactly when that's going to be, but we hope to be publishing sometime this fall. So for the meantime, we're reorganizing, we're refocusing, and read some of what we've done in the past. Hopefully that'll prove to you that we deserve to remain in the business. Kick in a few bucks, that will really help out, and we hope to be serving people, as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of worker-centric businesses, worker-owned businesses, because I think you get closer to like a true mission, a true vision, and the work that you're doing. Clearly a passion of love and caring. And I hope folks will most certainly help donate, throw in a couple bucks. I generally don't like making the pleas for money, but this is a good cause. We'll get links out on social media, and folks can take a look at that. But Nick, I appreciate the time, the work that you guys do there. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Again, make sure we're going to get some links out on social media on how you can take a look at the appeals website. I think it's theappeal.org. We'll get links out on how you can take a look at that. But for me, I mean, the sad reality is we live in this weird world where we have a legal system that is really punished the poor. I mean, I grew up in an area where the only time you saw a policeman, they were cracking heads. And I now live in a neighborhood where they come around and hand out glow sticks. They're officer friendly. What I want officer friendly in every neighborhood, because I'm not on the defund the police and do away with the police bandwagon. But we do need more responsive police presence, and we need a judicial system that's not going to be punitive. It's not about punishment as much for me as it's about helping people. I've had a lot of friends who've had problems legally, and because someone cared, because someone gave them a helping hand, they were able to straighten their lives out. And ultimately, that's where I want to be. Now, granted, murderers, rapists, whole nother ball of wax. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Do share your stories, your thoughts, your comments. Going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, and we are going all the way back to the year 1381. That was the day John Ball, the leader of the Peasants' Revolt in England, was executed. Due to the plague, the Black Death, in 1348, many peasants had died. Land was plentiful, and laborers were scarce. The authorities responded with emergency legislation, the Ordinance of Laborers in 1349, and the Statute of Laborers in 1351. These laws fixed wages at pre-plague levels and punished employers trying to outbid their competitors. Local lords had the right to prevent serfs from leaving their manors. To raise money for the ongoing 100 Years' War with France, Parliament levied a new tax on every person over the age of 14. This was especially unpopular among the peasant class. The church sided with the wealthy landowners. As a result, some priests rebelled against the church's hierarchy. John Ball was one of these rebels, and for his rebellion, he was imprisoned at Maidstone Castle. The initial outbreak of the Peasants' Revolt occurred in 1380. The people rose up against the new tax. One tax collector was beaten and driven from the village of Fabit. The Chief Justice, sent to calm the peasants, suffered a similar fate. Word spread, and uprisings occurred throughout England. Rebels in Kent besieged Maidstone Castle and freed John Ball. Troops were dispatched around the country to suppress the revolt. John Ball was hung, drawn and quartered in the market marketplace as an example to any other potential rebels. The peasants' revolt was crushed, but Parliament gave up trying to control peasant wages and stopped collecting the poll tax. Many peasants were now considered free men, no longer owned by landowners. All of these things helped to end the feudal system.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Exciting news from Wall Street. Our wealth markets are booming. Everything from the Dow Jones average to gold prices are rocketing to new records, showering us with wealth from above. Oh, wait, maybe you're one of the big majority of workaday Americans who don't own stocks or gold, so maybe you're not celebrating Wall Street's big boom. But just chill, because conventional corporate wisdom assures us that the wealthy will invest their good fortunes in enterprises that eventually will produce trickle-down gains for everyone. Excuse my rudeness, but let's take a peek at how those who are reaping today's big buck bonanza are actually investing that wealth. Look at Wall Streeters themselves. The big banks have been making money like bankers, with their stock prices zooming up by 28% just since January. So how are these moneyed elites spending this windfall? Not by making job-creating investments, but by simply giving the money to their big shareholders, including their own top executives, nearly all of whom are already among the richest people on earth. The main way they do this is through a sleight of hand called a stock buyback. The honchos simply cash out the bulk of that 28% increase in the value of the bank's stock price, using that money to repurchase more of their bank's own stock from lesser shareholders. Hocus pocus, this manipulation artificially pumps up the value of the stock these insider shareholders already own, making each of them even richer than rich, although they've done absolutely nothing to earn this increased wealth. This is Jim Hightower saying, it's not a small scam. J.P. Morgan Chase is now sinking $30 billion into buying its own stock. Wells Fargo is shifting $18 billion into the scheme, and Bank of America is throwing $25 billion into its buyback. Wall Street bankers are the biggest robbers in America. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is brought to you by the Lowdown Happy Hour, live streamed from the Chat and Chew Cafe. Details at hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interesting story by The Guardian. Evidently, according to The Guardian, the P-tapes, the infamous P-tape, might actually be real. They claim that they have a Kremlin leak that appears to confirm the compromat that everyone believed was there, that Putin held over Trump, and which is why the no interpreters in Helsinki and the little puppy dog, behavior, and never really all that tough on Vlad. Does it exist? I don't know. I've always said I thought it might. But at this point, for me, the important part is, did a sitting U.S. president subject themselves and the country to blackmail? I mean, that's the important thing. I'm here to share some thoughts on, is the P-tape real, and the slew of now books coming out. And fortunately, she's been reading her little eyes out. That's why I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at RawStory, rawstory.com, the website. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. So you have read all of the new former guy books, all of them up and down, so that we don't have to.
To be fair, so far there are only two. So
that's more than I want.
And it's a lot. It's about what you would think that it is. All of the things that I think we assumed over the last several years has turned out to pretty much be the case. And I think that's, again, why this whole P-tape thing is coming back and coming back and coming back. What they found in The Guardian was that there is compromise. There is something that the Russian government could hold over Trump. They didn't say it was a P-tape, but they said it was something. And Michael Cohen actually has talked about it, where he's like, I looked for it. I looked hard, and I looked for a long time, and I couldn't find it. So if it exists, I don't know who the hell has it, but it's somebody that I couldn't get to.
Well, if
And
the KGB, there they are.
Right? Like that would be the only, I think, place where he couldn't get to, right? The only thing that he probably couldn't reach would be the Russian government.
Yeah, I've always said that I think the compromat was his financial ties to the oligarchs. That, because he's guarded his tax returns and all of that stuff, as much as he possibly can. And I've always said, I think it's that he's basically bought. The money that he was able to get through Deutsche Bank and all the money that he's been able to get to save his businesses over the years, there's got to be some blood on that money somewhere. And to me, that was always, and we'll maybe find out at some point, because I think we have to find out. I think we have to know if he was compromised at any point during his administration. And so that, not to punish him as much as to make sure it never happens again.
Yeah, and I think what you said is spot on. Is we really need to figure out what this is in terms of, what it did for our country, how it put us in danger, and if there was something that happened that we need to be concerned about that he did while in office that maybe isn't public, stuff like that. So
now having a lunatic in the White House is something I don't think we should do again. Even though I do believe he's going to win in 2024, just my throwing that out there early. We'll see.
Good God, I hope not. Oh, I hope not. But I don't know. What do you want to? I ask me anything. I can tell you. I went through each person. You want to hear the most surprising thing?
Yes. Let's start with surprising.
So the most surprising thing for me was that, well, there might be two things. One was that Mark Meadows was actually freaking out about the January 6th insurrection.
Right.
And wanted it to stop. I was sort of shocked that he cared because, and I put this in the story, like an hour or so earlier, he was like flashing the double thumbs up to Don Jr. in the video that they took in the tent. So I'm not sure if I necessarily believe it, but he the way that it was described, he was freaking out. And so he kept calling Ivanka because they see her as the stable pony. And I guess what a stable pony is whenever you have a racehorse that gets really agitated and freaked out, they give it a pony, and apparently the pony makes it feel better.
Right.
So it just makes it sound sort of like a 7-year-old where it's like, I want a pony, So, and then the other thing that I think was really surprising was what Mike Pence was going through at the time in the Capitol. The Secret Service wanted to put him into the limo and rush him to Joint Base Andrews and presumably stick him on a plane and send him somewhere for safety. The Dick Cheney method, right? And he said no. And he told his head of security, look, I trust you, but I'm not getting in that car. And it was because there are two ways of thinking about this. One is that he knew that they would take him away, and he knew that he needed to stay there to at least make it look like the government of the United States had not been taken over by crazy people. Or he assumed that the Secret Service was colluding with Donald Trump. So,
yeah, Fredo, we love you, Fredo.
Right?
You got the kisses on both cheeks.
Yeah. So I think those were the two weird ones, and those were actually I think both of those, the Ivanka piece was in the Wolf book, and the second part was in the book from Carol Leonnig and Phil Rucker that isn't even out yet. They published a fantastic excerpt in the Washington Post today that's really, really long and just it was a gold mine of weirdness in such a short amount of space. Like that probably would have been a chapter in a book, and you're just like, holy crap.
Yeah, I mean, I think if people do read especially the Rucker and the woman's book, I don't remember her name though. Carol
Leonnig.
There you go. I think if people read that and actually, take a minute to kind of digest some of the insanity, the tale they tell is is really a White House in major chaos. Now, look, we knew this all along. We knew from the beginning. In 2015, I was saying that his management style is conflict. So he's going to continually set fires to cause conflict and to cause chaos. Yeah. We knew that going in, but from what I've been reading so far, it's even worse than you could have imagined.
Yeah, and what was in the Rucker Lenig book, or what will be in it whenever it comes out, is I feel like their book is a little bit more well researched in that they talk to a bunch of members of Congress. They talk to people in the Pentagon. Obviously they spent some time with General Milley because he's been all over the news talking about, holy crap, I thought there was going to be a coup. That's from their book as well. So, there's a lot there. And all of it is really like, there's a whole story about Mitt Romney being absolutely furious. And whenever the senators were in kind of the holding area, he went up to Ron Johnson and Josh Hawley and basically poked him in the chest and was like, this is your fault. The same thing happened. I think it was I don't remember if it was the Lenig book or the Bender book, but Liz Cheney basically did the exact same thing with Jim Jordan, right, who, tried to be like warm and fuzzy and be like, oh, we need to take care of all the women and make sure the women are in the, the secure area. And she just like slapped his hand away and was like, this is your fault. And a slew of profanities. And I was just like, nice, well done. So,
and well deserved.
At least, I feel like at least, Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney did what I really wish we could all do.
Now, the thing that gets me is, these are the same people who, are now, they were responsible for what happened on January 6th, and they're now the ones holding up an investigation. In fact, there was just a story out, I think, that Kevin McCarthy, evidently today, I guess it was, met with the former guy about, how they're going to provide the defense. And go, wait a second, you're not the defense attorney. This isn't the defense of Donald Trump. This is an investigation into what happened on one of the worst days in this country's history. Why are you colluding with the guy who incited it?
And theoretically, like what the Republicans have said this whole time is that Trump was not at fault. This was not his doing. This was not his fault. So if it isn't his doing, if it isn't his fault, as Republicans have said, then why are you coordinating with him on who needs to be on the committee? The thing is it's probably going to end up being somebody like Jim Jordan or Devin Nunes. And they're just going to turn it into a spectacle, and they're going to end up making the Republicans look even worse. And you will have Liz Cheney on there because Pelosi put her there, and it will give some kind of legitimacy to what the Democrats actually put out. Even though, I don't necessarily trust Liz Cheney as being this paragon of bipartisanship but at the very least, that one person, I think, will give it the legitimacy that it needs for people to believe what the findings are.
Yeah, still a Cheney in my view, but at least in this moment on the right side of history, I would love to see her and Jim Jordan go at it, especially given that little bit of history that we've found out. But I'm looking forward to the one book. Because I think you're right. I think it's a little bit better sourced. I think they're actual journalists. I think a lot of the stuff that we'll see is going to be a little more factual. But again, I think it's just going to for me, it's just going to solidify my already pre-existing views. Do you think this matters to the base? Do you think this changes any hearts and minds? Do you think someone looks at it and goes, oh my God, I didn't realize it was this bad, and changes their mind?
I would think that if anything, it would be the thing with General Milley. That would be the only thing that I would hope, maybe not his base, but, independents and Republicans, moderate Republicans would look at that and be like, holy crap. Because at the time, if you remember, like we were all it was like sort of talking heads and liberals and people like us who were talking about like, oh my God, what if he gets the nukes and stuff like that. And it was really downplayed by a lot of the generals. And now we're finding out that the generals were just as freaked out as we are, or we were. And
they just put a happy face on it.
Yeah, and so it's this strange feeling of, I mean, for me, when the generals get scared, that's when I want to run, right? Like, that's like, oh crap, that's when you flee. And so if they were freaked out and Pelosi was legitimately freaked out, being like, dude, there's got to be some barriers in place here, right? And he was like, yes, we've got this handled. But secretly he was thinking, oh crap, this could really happen. That is horrifying to think about.
Yeah.
The one thing though,
we could have almost nuked a hurricane.
Yes, we could have. There was a story about Truman and dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and because we just reached the 75-year anniversary. And there was a whole thing about it, and how when they dropped the first bomb, he was very well aware of it. The second bomb, he didn't actually know was going to be dropped. And he didn't know where it was going to go. And because of cloud cover, they ended up dropping it in an area outside of Nagasaki, which was actually the secondary target, because their first one was not, was too much cloud cover and they couldn't see. And so when they dropped it, it was all on schools and neighborhoods, and like it wasn't in a city. And so it was very much like children and families who were hurt. And Truman was furious. And that's when the United States put all of these barriers in place to protect the whole world from, one person in the government being able to drop a bomb on somebody. It no longer became, one person making that decision. And so I think what General Milley did is probably walked Pelosi through that and be like, look, this is what we have. And this is, these are the people who pledged an allegiance to the Constitution and not to a man. And that's, I think, the way that the government should work.
Yeah. Now I know my Trump-loving friends are going to hear what you just said and see, the whole government was conspiring against him.
Oh, please. That's not the way it works. I mean, and that's not the way the military works. Anybody who's ever served in the armed forces, my grandfather was in the Army for years. God love him. He came in 6 months after Korea and got out like 8 months before Vietnam. So we never saw combat. But it's one of those things where you have this idea of patriotism and dedication to your country, and you treat the commander-in-chief as though he is the commander-in-chief. But the reality is, you swear an oath to the Constitution, and if the commander-in-chief wants you to do something that's against the Constitution, you're supposed to say no. And that's what General Milley told Pelosi.
Yeah, I'm going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Now, we also found out that some Trump supporters have filed, I guess, a lawsuit accusing Saturday Night Live of committing hate crimes. Saturday Night Live is committing hate crimes by skewering Dear Leader.
I think that's going to be awesome. I would love to see that go forward. I know it won't. They're going to come into court, and the judge is going to be like, you have no standing. Bye. Because it's satire, and satire is protected by the First Amendment. And that's one of the things that I think the Attorney General had to tell Donald Trump as well, because he wanted to do the exact same thing. And so, I mean, if Saturday Night Live is smart, they're going to turn this into a big thing where they can, use it for their own promotional purposes and do skits making fun of them and all of these things. And I think, it's just going to make Trump supporters look even stupider. And
that's not possible. That's not possible. The story that you've got it's my favorite, is the guy in the gladiator outfit who was recording his treason for mom. Look, Mom, this is my flag. In a gladiator costume.
Transcript. I don't know if you've ever watched South Park before.
Yeah.
But I just have Eric Cartman's voice in my mind. Where he's like,
man, flag.
I'm at the Capitol, man.
No, kitty.
Like a comic book dude bro, like from Mallrats or something, where he's like, dude, it seems sort of like that voice in my head. And if you read the transcripts, I really encourage folks to go and read that. It is the most hilarious thing you will ever see. Like, he really is narrating this whole video to his mother as if he's on FaceTime with her, and he's not. He's just saying it on video, and he's like, oh my God, I'm sure you wish you were here. I mean, not really, but like in spirit, and this is just amazing. And oh my God, oh my God, they just broke in. Oh my God, Mom, you're not gonna believe this. And like, it was very, it just seemed like he was talking to her like she was actually there. And that is just weird. I mean, obviously the guy is dressed in a gladiator costume, which was supposed to be a character out of Book of Mormon, not the musical, but the actual book. And so it's somebody who like fought for the people or something like that. But I'm not educated on the Book of Mormon as well as
No,
I should be.
I'm not
sure.
either. But I looked at it and go, "This guy probably in his late 30s or early 40s, maybe."
Yeah,
Dressed
definitely.
up,
I mean,
dressed up in a gladiator costume, talking to his mother.
yeah. I mean, I love my mother, and one day I'm sure that my mother will move in with me, and I will take care of my parents. But it's like I have my place, and my parents have their place.
Yeah, I don't know that you're calling Mom. Say, Mom, it's a workout. I made it up the steps.
Yeah, like that's not. I mean, I think about the conversations I've had with my mother, and it's like this would not be the one,
Yeah.
It would just not.
Crazy. And speaking of crazy, I saw Matt Gaetz was at the Free Britney rally there in Los Angeles, I guess trolling for teenage girls. But evidently he has something in common with Jeffrey Epstein and El Chapo, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They all share the same lawyer.
Isn't that crazy? It's surprising, I suppose, but I guess you have these Florida lawyers who all know each other. Maybe that's hard to figure out. But the thing about Matt Gaetz being into Britney, I just feel like we should tell him that those videos on the Disney Channel are reruns. They're not for today, and she's actually much older. But I mean, the fact that he was there instead of in Washington dealing with legislation, right? Like that just
weird.
Seems very. Why is he in office, right? Like that is the thing where I keep questioning. The dude wanted to go work for Newsmax. He clearly doesn't take his job seriously. He ends up looking like an idiot in hearings all the time. So why is he there? I mean, Donald Trump's not there anymore. So what's the point? He's not doing anything.
Yeah, I think his
basically basically Marjorie Taylor Greene with taller hair.
Yeah, I think the two of them would make a good Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they should do.
Precisely the right hair.
That's exactly what they should. But the weird thing is I guess if I'm somebody who's accused of having sex with a minor and could face some real jail time, I would go to the lawyer who got somebody off who was having sex with a minor like Jeffrey Epstein. They got him a sweetheart deal. Maybe that's yeah. I mean, you got to give him credit. The
thing about Epstein though is he was giving bukus a buck to the elected officials who were controlling this stuff.
True.
And I'm sure Matt Gaetz's father has a little bit of cash, but I don't know that he has Jeffrey Epstein cash. So I don't know the degree to which he's going to be able to buy his way out of it the way that people like El Chapo and Jeffrey Epstein did.
Yeah. Does he go to jail?
I don't know yet. I'm curious to see what Joel Greenberg has said about him to the prosecutors, because we still don't know. We know that Greenberg has actually asked for a hold before they do his sentencing because he's still working with the prosecutors, which surprises me. I feel like I don't know that there's that much stuff to tell, but clearly there is, because he's still talking to him and still working with them and trying to, give up people.
Well, going to see interesting how that plays out. If he did it, jail, without question.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's simple.
One of those jails where they treat people like that in a special way, because he deserves it.
I've been yelled at when I've said that in the past, so I'm going to let you say that instead of me.
Notice how I said in a special way.
You did, in a very special way. But as always, Sarah, I appreciate the time. Great stuff, great work. I hope folks will check out rawstory.com and the work that you do there. Thanks so much. As always, great stuff.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Our good friend Sarah Burris. Again, make sure you check out their website, rawstory.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to the Rick Smith Show.
saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
Get this done. We are getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Senate Democrats unveil massive $3.5 trillion infrastructure and climate deal.
This is our generational task, and it must unite us.
European Union unveils landmark Green Deal. Plus, yet more evidence that meaningful action on climate would save lives and save money.
All of those savings and more straight ahead from BrandBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Things are even hot in Alaska. Yesterday, temperatures climbed to as high as 92 degrees, which means this year the salmon the grizzlies are catching is fully cooked.
This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it kind of seems like they forgot about us for a while, but now, finally, the Democrats have come out with their infrastructure deal. Sort of.
Yes. Senate Democrats unveiled a sweeping budget deal to fund some of President Joe Biden's top priorities. It targets $3.5 trillion in spending over the next 10 years that they intend to pass under Senate budget reconciliation rules that allow for a simple majority vote. The amount comes out to about $350 billion a year. That's less than half the U.S. military's annual budget. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer lauded the proposal that increases spending to assist working families and also includes significant investment in climate action, paid for with taxes on corporations and wealthy Americans.
This is generational, transformational change to help American families.
This is on top of the bipartisan infrastructure compromise previously negotiated with a handful of moderate Senate Republicans. And of course, that's if those Republicans don't renege on that deal.
Oh, they're going to renege.
The new Senate Democrats' proposal boosts critical clean energy policies with a national clean electricity standard targeting 80% clean electricity and cutting carbon emissions economy-wide in half by 2030. A civilian climate corps to create jobs in addressing climate change and conservation. Incentives to boost clean cars and the weatherization and electrification of buildings. Wildfire prevention, plus reorienting energy tax breaks to promote renewable energy. Also, the budget plan would include the first ever carbon border tax. That's a tariff on imports from countries that don't enact emissions reduction policies to protect domestic manufacturers while simultaneously pressuring other countries to reduce their emissions that cause dangerous global warming.
A lot of good stuff for climate in that package, if it comes together.
Indeed, and the devil will be in the details, as congressional committees will now draw up detailed language for the legislation. However, Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of the coal state of West Virginia said on Wednesday that he will not support any provisions that he believes would eliminate fossil fuels.
Oh, brother.
On the same day, the European Union outlined its own proposal for a landmark European Green Deal that looks suspiciously similar to Progressive Democrats' Green New Deal. The EU Green Deal includes a stronger carbon tax and boosts renewable energy and social spending to ensure a just transition for workers and households. The European Union's plan is an ambitious and legally binding roadmap for climate action. It targets cutting the coalition's carbon emissions by 55% by 2030, putting the EU on the road to net zero emissions by 2050. It also includes a carbon border tax similar to Senate Democrats' proposal. In a press conference, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen focused on the moral imperative to break away from fossil fuels.
Our current fossil fuel economy has reached its limits. And we know that we have to move on to a new model, one that is powered by innovation, that has clean energy.
Oh, I hope they don't tell Joe Manchin.
There are too many provisions to list here, but the EU will ban sales of new gas and diesel-powered cars by 2035 and enact new carbon taxes on fossil fuel use in aviation and shipping and other sectors. But to be clear, if enacted, the policies outlined in both the EU and the U.S. are not sufficient to stay below the 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature target in the UN Paris Climate Agreement that scientists say offers the best chance to avoid catastrophic climate impact.
So all of this action, and none of it is up to the task of what scientists say we need to do.
Not yet, but again, a target that is not set is a target that is not met.
Wow.
Finally, good news. A new global economic study shows that climate investments outlined in both the EU and U.S. plans will pay us back. A new meta-analysis of clean energy studies finds a rapid transition is not only achievable and affordable, but will result in immense economic and public health benefits, including creating 1 million net new jobs in the U.S. while avoiding $1 to $3 trillion in public health and economic losses through 2050.
I'll take it. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I just can't get over the AFL-CIO's executive pay report. I mean, just mind-blowing when you look at the fact that over the last decade, our heavy 500 CEOs of the S&P 500 saw $2.6 million increase over the decade. Last year alone, $712,000. Their average pay went up. That just mind-blowing. And when you compare that to the average worker who saw just under $1,000 a year in increase, while the cost of everything going through the roof, it's crazy. And it's crazy that we put up with it, and which is why I'm thrilled that to this point the PRO Act is still in this infrastructure plan. This is a good thing. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on a little bit on the infrastructure thing. Is this going to get done? And maybe does the PRO Act stay? I've asked our good friend, former Ohio congressman and political analyst Bob Ney to come talk with us. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you, Rick.
So, I'm looking at this report, and I've been looking at this most of the day going, this is just, it's crazy. There's got to be a way to close that gap. And yes, I do know what it is. That's make those CEOs sit across the bargaining table from their workforce and go, wait a second, you're getting $12 million a year. You're not giving me a nickel raise. We got a problem.
Right. I mean, that study is fascinating. $712,000. That's the average S&P 500 CEO pay over the previous year. $2.6 million. The amount the average, up above, S&P 500 CEO pay has increased in the last decade, and then $15.5 million, the average compensation of SAMP CEOs in 2020. That's the average.
Yeah, during the global pandemic.
And there's, I think, another factor to look at this, and it's corporate welfare. And the reason I bring that into the discussion, as people say, well, they have no right to go in and tax the corporations. They have no right to say how much a corporate head should make. That's up to the board to do that, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if people truly realized, and if they thought about how much corporate welfare is out there, as we call it, and how much money from the taxpayers goes into the corporations for all kinds of subsidies. And hey, I like baseball as much as the next person, but ballparks, pharmaceutical companies, and on and on and on. Now, the companies, of course, will say, well, we take this money and we create jobs. Well, maybe they do, but the fact remains they take taxpayer money. Therefore, if they take taxpayer money, they can't say, well, no, wait a minute, government, you got to stay out of my business, but by the way, send me that check next year.
Yeah.
That's take and eat it scenario that shouldn't occur.
Yeah, but it's also one of those things that some of my Republican friends say that, the reason that we can't tax corporations is because they take all this risk. They're taking all this risk, Bob, so they should be able to the victor goes the spoils. They took the risk. When the sad reality is they're not really taking the risk because we're subsidizing it.
Well, it's also look at the issue of when banks were failing. The government stepped in. The savings and loans in the 80s in Ohio, the 72 closed. The government stepped in. When you look at different times with the automobile industry, et cetera, the government stepped in. So they may have taken risks, but when the big boys get in trouble, they will come to the government for the bailout. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be bailed out here and there to save some jobs, but I'm just saying that they like to separate arm's length, but on the other hand, they like to take the money.
No, they know where to put their snouts. Right there in the government trough, which is why I think we should be taxing. I say pay a CEO as much as you want, but we go back to a good socialist president like Dwight David Eisenhower's tax code. Pay him as much as you want. We'll just tax him at 92% over $1.6 million.
Well, and yes, and also I said on your show not too long ago, and it ended up a false statement by accident because Bezos didn't pay taxes for so long that when I said he doesn't pay taxes, he actually had paid taxes the year before. I mean, it was something like phenomenal, like, I don't know, 25 million or 100 million, whatever. Not phenomenal for him. I'm being sarcastic, but a lot of these people have not paid taxes.
Right.
And I like real estate as much as the next person. As you know, I flip houses, but the amount for the big boys, not for the little flippers, the amount of deductions you can take and just get out of taxes too with the real estate magnates is it's amazing.
Which is why I always wanted to see Donald Trump's tax returns. Not because I thought there was a smoking gun in there or anything, but because I think it's important to know, where do our rich people, what do they pay? What loopholes do they get to abuse? All of those things.
Well, they take their money up front, or they have stock cushions, and then those are used to buy certain luxury frills, obviously, or travel or airplanes, or whatever. So it's all shielded that way too. But there's a lot of large deductions that are taken, and I still think, though, on his account, he was worried about the tax returns, but he was more worried that he didn't look rich enough on paper.
No, that's part of it too. But
that's part of it.
The fact that the one report that he took some housing tax break, meant for middle income families. It's just one of those things you go, that's just being greedy.
Well, who was it that got the child tax credit? Was it Bezos?
It was Bezos, yeah.
Yeah, he got the child tax credit. I'm looking at that going, wow. And there's probably somebody just over the limit, out there, working person that didn't get it because they were like $100 over or something.
No, I mean, that's how crazy this whole system, this whole scheme is.
It is. And one thing, it doesn't sound good, everything, but Trump made a point a while back. If the system lets me do it, I'm doing it.
No, and look, I don't disagree with that. If we've allowed this to happen, the problem is us. I keep coming back to that all the time. We keep voting for people who tell us to our face, we are never raising taxes on rich people. Now we're not going to raise taxes on you, but we will fee you to death. I just bought a used car, and the guy was, adamant. He was just infuriated that they raised the registration fee like $3. He was literally apoplectic, losing his mind over the fact that the registration fee went up $3. And I'm going, well, that's because we won't raise taxes on rich people, so they're just going to filter it down to the rest of us and call it something different.
Right. You mentioned the PRO Act and protecting the right to organize act, the PRO Act, and that's going to be an interesting question. I almost look at it as mandatory that it has to remain.
I agree.
Mandatory, because the bill expands, as you know, labor protections related to employees' rights to organize and collective bargain in the workplace. And if that is stripped out, I don't know how the Democratic side will be able to say to labor, well, hey, we're with you, but, we just couldn't toe the line on that one. That's one that Yeah, they might reduce the price of the bill. They might take out a few here or there's. I can't imagine how that can be removed.
The only way I see it being removed is if the Senate parliamentarian chucks it like she did to the minimum wage.
Well, that's true. That's true. I'm just saying, by the powers to be in the Senate and the members, I can't imagine that being removed.
And I don't know how you can't find that to be economic, because it's got to be something economic, right?
Right. Yes, it does.
I don't know how being able to set the wages and being able to negotiate for better wages, hours, conditions, I don't know how that's not economic.
Well, it is. It's pure economic because of the amount of, if they have decent wages as workers, they're going to add more to the economy of the United States. They're going to pay more taxes. They're going to add more to the communities. I mean, there's probably 10 major ways that this does fit into a reconciliation package. Also, if it goes into the bill to the floor, Senator Schumer's trying to bring this whole measure up. If it goes into there, then it has to be removed by amendment. I'm telling you, on a amendment by amendment case, there are chances where the Democratic side would pick up a Republican or two on that amendment. I would think.
Yeah,
there's an option.
I hope so. I'm guardedly optimistic that this happens, because my fear, as everyone knows who listens, my fear is that Pennsylvania becomes a right-to-work state in 2023. If this passes, that designation is no longer something that can, from what I understand, can happen. We restore people's rights. We restore the mandate that people have to fund what they get. And that would help strengthen the movement and help strengthen the ability to organize and do all the things that need to be done to rebuild the most prosperous working class in history. And I think it's important. And I'm calling, I'm pushing. I hope all of our listeners are doing that as well, because to me, the PRO Act is really a really important part of this.
Well, it is, and also then an employee can refuse to participate in something that the employee says, hey, that's a clear violation. I want a clearance and a idea and a ruling on this. So it gives a lot of protections, beyond the bargaining rights. It gives safety protections and alleged violations that could be out there by a business. So I think that it's a very decent act.
Yeah, you think it's got a chance? I mean, because as I was saying at the beginning, I think the line of the era of big government is really over. I mean, this is Biden and the Democrats taking us backwards a little bit in time with massive investments, talking about expanding the child tax credit for the $300 a month or $250 a month per kid for a little while, which is weird to me. I haven't had many Republicans complaining about socialism in a while.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. Now, on the other side of the PRO Act, then they're going up on the Hill right now as we speak, and people are like, well, this is really going to hurt the Ubers and the gig people, and it's going to hurt the Lyft drivers, et cetera. Now, if that's the only thing out there they're lobbying for, a lot of people that are working right now in those jobs are just working because they have to. If they could unionize, that'd be okay.
Yep.
So that's not going to carry water. It's either going to be removed, you made a great point, either by the parliamentarian, which I don't know what leg they would have to stand on it, but I really think that there is no way that Senator Schumer can bring this measure and say, well, just didn't have enough support. He's got to take it, all the way with this one.
No, I absolutely agree. But on the independent contractor folks, you've got these gig workers who, they're against the ABC test. That's the big knock. Because you've got a couple people who do freelance writing, and we've had people who've done freelance writing before. Their fear is that, the employee test, they don't want to be employees, they say. Which again, I think you figure out a way in an environment where you work part-time or whatever, but you get the benefits and the the wages and the Social Security and all the things that they're being cheated out of right now. You get that stuff paid into.
Right.
Which
I
again,
just don't see a powerful force of all these, gig workers that are able to like amass all this power up on Capitol Hill in the next 3 weeks to stop something like this. Right. I just don't see it.
I don't either.
The big corporate lobbyists are a different world. I understand that, but not the actual workers.
Oh no, I'm sure they're spending.
Right.
They're doing everything they can do. But I also wanted to get your thoughts on, they're talking about expanding Medicare and Medicaid. The Medicare part, with the dental and the vision and the hearing, I think that's long overdue.
Well, it's fantastic. This one, and of course, if they would go to 55 and above, it would be just, believe me, the Republicans would say, wow, we got a lot of people wanting us to do this. They would. There's 55-year-old Republicans that would, if you lay it before them, they'll want it.
Yep.
They're in a crunch. I would love to have had it. I went into massive debt from after with my heart attack and things. But the dental and the eye and the ear, that is fantastic because people are holding off on dental work. They're holding off on. Nobody should have sympathy for me for an economic situation, but I am holding off on glasses now, and the reason I am is I've got a slight beginning of a cataract, and it might take a while before I can get it removed, but I'm not going to go out and cough up $500 for a prescription and then it changes.
Right.
So you sit there and you live with what you got. And I'm just using that example because there's tons of people out there like me, that are really up against the wall and they have, just Social Security period, and they're hurting. And the dental is just absolutely, what are you going to do? You have to pay it. You put it on your credit card, you go borrow money. I think it's fantastic to expand that, and with Medicaid. And
the 55, lowering, if you could lower it down to 55. I know tons of people would retire tomorrow.
Well, they would have if I got to punch this bag again. Joe Lieberman. Remember Joe Lieberman if you think he's the hero. Anybody?
No, Trader Joe.
Trader Joe did it. President Obama had it in there. That was in the original ACA.
Again, I am perfectly aware of how many Democrats have stabbed me in the back over the years. And he's just another one.
I just like to mention him a lot because I think he really did serious damage to many, many people in this country with what he did of removing that from the ACA.
Wanted to get your thoughts on some of the news around the former guy. The Guardian's reporting there may be a P-tape. You care?
I don't care about that. I don't want to see it. Do I have to watch it to do the radio show?
No, but
please tell me no.
For me, I don't care if there is one. I don't care if he did it. For me, the problem is if the Russians did have this and they were blackmailing him, I think having a president that was compromised is a real problem.
Sure. That's always been the point. If any president that would be compromised, if there had a tape like that, Putin would utilize it. I thought you were going to ask me about the fact of Trump meeting with McCarthy and
I was getting there.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm getting there.
All right.
Give me a second.
There you go. I haven't talked to you for a while. I'm all anxious.
Yeah. No. We're going to get there. Because that was where I was going next. I knew you weren't going to spend a lot of time on this. But I think having McCarthy go and meet with Trump on what their quote unquote defense or line of attack is, I think that's really troubling.
Oh, I think it is troubling. Now, of course, they said, well, they're not given the details at this point in time, what the agenda is, et cetera, but it's going to be on the agenda. The other thing I think is, and McCarthy says he hasn't decided yet. He will appoint people. Now, this whole thing I haven't decided yet. He wants to go talk to Trump and get the blessings. And you know what Trump's going to say? Get the best, get the tough guys and Jim Jordan, everybody in there to defend me. So right. McCarthy will point to it. I think one of the most alarming things too that has been said, and this is recently last Sunday when former President Trump was talking about wanting to know who shot Babbitt. And, saying that who's the person that shot an innocent, wonderful, incredible woman, a military woman, right in the head. He said that, on the show. And to me, what is McCarthy going to say, who is one of the elected members who every single day he and members and 10,000 people owe their lives to getting out of that building alive to the Capitol Hill Police. What is he going to turn around? That's going to come up in the conversation. I mean, if I were the Democrat side, I would bring that up.
No, I think you have to. I mean, and this is one of those weird things where you go, and I don't know if we talked about that, but the fact that and this is the weird. I guess this is the question for you, because the leadership has to know who that person is, don't they?
Oh, of course they know. Yes.
And the fact that, for me, the amazing thing of all of this is that his name has not leaked out.
Right.
I mean, I got to be honest. That is really remarkable to me, that people know who the officer was, and his name hasn't been leaked out.
Right. Exactly. Well, except for some of the yahoos, and I'll call them that, Congresswoman and Congressman Yahoo, who make the statements that these were peaceful tourists. Except for them, deep in the hearts of any member in that building, they have an infinity. They have some type of feeling or relationship with the Capitol Hill Police. You can't work in that building and not have it. I oversaw them, so I had a deep contact with the Capitol Hill Police, and what they do for the members and the staff and and the visitors to keep that building open and free. Well, it should be, at least. They need to let visitors go back, but they have a feeling for it, and so I think there's a lot of people. McCarthy probably knows it, and even he's not going to say it, just to satisfy Trump.
Yeah. Going to be interesting to see how this plays out, and I'm looking forward to it. But as always, I appreciate the time. Always good stuff.
Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney. We'll take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to the Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1931. That was the day that Ralph Gray was attacked for trying to organize black farmers. Gray was born to a large African-American family in Alabama. Living in the Jim Crow South, he became a tenant farmer. He joined the Communist Party. At the time, communist labor organizers were often more open to black membership and leadership than were other white-dominated labor organizations. Along with his brother Tommy, Ralph helped to found the Croppers and Farm Workers Union in Tallapoosa County, Alabama. They set to work organizing black sharecroppers. Then, several of the local landlords stopped providing food and money to their workers. They did this in an effort to force the black workers to labor on building a new sawmill. Angry sharecroppers joined the new union in protest. The union demanded more autonomy for the tenant farmers. They also demanded a longer school day and a public school bus for their children. Alarmed by this organizing, the sheriff, Kyle Young, led a posse to break up a union meeting. They beat and terrorized the union members. The vigilantes then went to Tommy Gray's house, where they fractured his wife's skull. Ralph Gray chased them off with a shotgun. But the next night, on July 16th, the union met again. Gray and others armed themselves to protect the meeting. Gunfire was exchanged. The sheriff shot Ralph Gray while he lay on the ground, already wounded. The mob of vigilantes then burned Gray's house to the ground. They placed Gray's mutilated corpse on the courthouse steps as a warning to any others who dare to stand up for the rights of black workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
The question is, how much guff do you take at work? How much harassment, how much intimidation, how much vulgarity, how much much BS do you take from people at work? I saw this story yesterday over at the New York Times about this restaurant up in Massachusetts. The Apt Cape Cod, it's a farm-to-table restaurant in Brewster, Massachusetts. Evidently, the people there were so bad. The people were so mistreating of the employees, harassing of the employees, that the owner actually had like a mental health day, shut the restaurant down for a day of kindness, is what they called it, after the customers basically made the staff cry. And they tell the story of how, people just, they want things, they want it now. And they don't understand that, the supply chain has been broken. Everything's not going to be on the menu. You might have to wait a couple minutes. Things aren't going to be on your demand. People aren't there to meet your every need. And this is one of these weird kind of stories in that the more we get back to some bit of normal, the more the tensions of being around other people, the more of our intolerance of others pops up and gets even worse. It's one of those things where you go, who would do such a thing? Some of the stories that I was reading about just the one table complained that they had to wait for a table because they didn't have enough staff to wait on everybody. Complained that the food took too long. Complained about everything. And then I guess when the food came, they said, well, we just want it boxed up. Made the people go and box it up, and then they took it, I guess, threw it out. And it's one of those things where you go, why? What would make you do that? And now look, I understand that there are some horrible people out there. I understand that wait staff. Look, you talk to anybody who's worked in a restaurant, you talk to anybody in the service industry, they're going to tell you that people are horrible. That people always look down on them and treat them poorly. That's a constant. But the stories coming out now are much worse. And it got me thinking about, back when I was a teenager in high school. The reality is I know I'm not a people person. I'm not going to be in customer service. You're not putting me on the other end of the "how may I help you" line. That ain't happening. I know that much about me. And it started back when I was a teenager. There was this woman. She came in. She ordered her stuff, got what she wanted. She ate like 3/4 of the hamburger and came back and said, I was working at Wendy's as a teenager, doing the fast food thing. Was there only about 3 months. Didn't last long. But she came back and said, this is, wrong. And I want another one. And, I looked at it and I go, you ate like 3/4 of it. I can't give you another one. And she started, yelling and carrying on. And I just said, at that point, I'm like, well, if you're going to act like that, the answer is clearly no. And she took the French fries that she had that had ketchup all over and threw them at me. And immediately, like reflexively, I took the Frosty that she had on her tray and I hit her in the face with it. Granted, I didn't work much after that, but I knew at a very young age, I wasn't putting up with that. It was just never going to happen. But I used to watch some of the older workers because there's this myth that it's just teenagers like I was working in fast food joints. That's not how it is. Because you know what? I wasn't putting up with it. I got fired. And you know what? I didn't care because I didn't need the money. But that woman in her 30s who had the kid, she needed that job. She had to put up with that nonsense. And these people know this. This woman had to have gotten away with that multiple times before because the level of confidence coming back and going, I want another one, was just, when I think about it, was just incredible. Because people get away with this stuff, especially with low wage workers who are desperate. Which is why I've said for the longest time, we need to raise the wages so people have a little income security, and we need to give them a voice. We need to give them power in the workplace so that if people are being treated like this, you throw them out. The customer is not always right. In fact, in this moment right now, the customer is never right. A little tolerance. A little decency. I know we've lost a lot of that. And we know it's about me. I want it all. A little decency. But good on the owner of this restaurant for saying, look, need a mental health day. Everybody go home, take a break, take a breath, start over. And maybe the customers who didn't get their meals the next day, maybe they'll come around too. But you know what? Try and be nice to each other. It's not that hard. It's really not. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go, wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com.